Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. This is Hako from Everlance. I'm joined here by Knox, our tax expert from Happy Tax. And we'll just wait another minute to allow everyone to settle in. We're just waiting for a few people. Yeah, it looks like so far we have a good number of dashers. So thank you all for making it in. And Knox, is your audio good too?
Yeah, should be good.
Awesome. And also just want to shout out everyone who asked questions already in the RSVP form. So we're definitely going to get to those. So that'll be great. And you guys should also all be able to see a chat function if you're on your computer or on your phone at the bottom of the app, so you can ask questions in there. Just address them to everyone, and then I'll flag some of them for Knox to answer live. I'll answer some of them via chat. So yeah, it'll be pretty good. And yeah, you guys are all the really prepared people, since tax season is just starting. This is the first webinar we're doing. So congrats, pat on the back to you for being here. And yeah, I think we can get started. So I think all of you should be able to see our screen right now. We're showing today's schedule. So we're gonna do quick introductions, and then we're gonna get right into it. We know you guys are busy. You're out there trying to make money as a dasher, or maybe you have other jobs too that you're working on today. So we're gonna be pretty quick and just get to the top dasher questions. And then we're also gonna highlight some great discounts for filing your taxes, and additional resources should you have any questions in the future. So yeah, over with introductions. So my name is Hako. I'm the head of partnerships at Everlance. I've been with Everlance for about 2.5 years, and I work a ton with DoorDash and just people in the gig economy in general, Uber drivers, Lyft, Postmates, everything. So I'm really familiar with the space. I'm passionate about helping people save money. So I'm excited to be here and joined by Knox. I'll let him introduce himself. Knox, you're muted.
It definitely helps to unmute. Thanks for letting me know. So yeah, we'll come back and talk some about Everlance in just a moment for sure. But who am I? Well, I'm an enrolled agent. That means that I hold a federal license, so I can practice in any state. I'm considered one of the nation's leading tax experts, teach other tax practitioners all across the country, and specialize in several areas that may be of interest to you. Obviously, the gig economy is one of my things, but I also specialize in the taxation of cryptocurrency, the taxation of clergy, the taxation of cannabis, as well as handle some tax resolution, meaning that when people get in trouble with the IRS, I help with those sorts of things as well. So good to be with you today. So glad to be here as a part of it, and certainly appreciate Everlance's invitation with that. And with that, I'm sure that Hako would prefer to tell you a little bit about Everlance. And now you're muted, Hako.
Look at that, look at that. So we'll keep it pretty short since you guys are here to learn about taxes, not about our product, but just to like the high level is that Everlance is the easiest way to track all your mileage and your expenses when you're dashing or doing any sort of independent work, so that you can then write everything off on your taxes super easily and pay as little as possible. So that's Everlance. We're the highest rated, things like that. And yeah, the app is really beautiful. It's easy to use. And yeah, we hope you check it out if you want to, go ahead with increasing your deductions next year. But yeah, let's get over to the big questions that dashers have. So what's the first one, Knox? Let's see. So high level, dashers want to know, what are the tax differences between employees and independent contractors? So as a dasher, you are an independent contractor, right? Many of you may not even know that. That's an important thing to note. So Knox, what are the main differences?
Yeah, so an employee is someone who receives a W-2, right? This is, if I go and I work for Walmart, or I go and I work for Target, or fill in the blank, any other, national company or even local company, and I am their employee, they tell me when I can show up, what I can do, and I have to follow their directions, then I'm an employee and I'm going to get a W-2. That means that they're going to pay half of the half of the Social Security tax and half of the Medicare tax, and then I pay that in the form of FICA. It's a deduction on my taxes. However, An independent contractor is a little bit different. As an independent contractor, you get to log into the app and you get to say, hey, I'm willing to go work, and I'll sort of work when I want to. So they don't direct you necessarily. You're an independent contractor and you receive a 1099. That means that your income tax was not withheld along the way. So as we mentioned on a W-2, they're going to hold out withholdings for FICA. That's the Social Security and the Medicare part. They're going to pay for some unemployment insurance, and they're going to do withholdings to help you pay for your taxes at both the federal and the state level as you go. As an independent contractor, nobody has withheld those taxes. So that's going to be a major difference as we prepare for your tax returns and as you do some planning for moving forward. And we'll talk more about that as we move through today.
Awesome. And just to, if you go back to that one for a quick second. So, you know, Knox obviously is our tax expert. I'm more of a lay person here. So I'll try to, you know, break it down a little bit as a, you know, like person who's not really a tax expert myself. What I can say for, as an independent contractor.
Questions.
We have a question. Yes, actually, let's try that. Let's see what it's like to take a question on over the phone. What's your question?
About the taxes? I already got my taxes.
Okay.
But can you use Stride just as much as Everlance, or is Everlance kind of more?
Yeah. No, you can totally use Stride. So, you know, full disclosure, they're one of our competitors, but we're very similar. You know, like, and I'm not going to talk about like why I think we're better. Because yeah, really, we're here to answer questions about taxes. So yeah, if you're using Stride, that's great as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
My other half, with some of you guys have like an auto move detector where you move and stop and stuff.
Right.
That's
Yeah, exactly.
neat.
So we have the auto. That's one of the main differences is we auto detect when you're driving. So that's pretty cool.
That's neat. That is pretty neat.
So yeah. So thank you for that question. Yeah. So now just to get back to what I was saying. Just 1 second.
Sorry.
No worries. That's great. I appreciate that. Yeah. And then for any other questions, I think the easiest way is throw them over chat. If that works, I think it'll be easier. But yeah, basically to get back to summarizing what Knox was saying, as an employee, every time you get paid on your paycheck, your employer's taking out taxes. As an independent contractor, that's not the case. So you're going to have a bigger tax bill at the end of the year. But the cool thing is you can write off all these things, all your business expenses, and pay pretty little in taxes, hopefully. So cool. So go ahead, Knox.
So it looks like you're muted, Hako.
Oh man, look at that. Okay. So this next question, what expenses should I track and deduct? This is a question that a lot of people had in the RSVP form. They were asking, what are the main deductions that I should be tracking? How do I pay the least in taxes? So Knox will cover this.
Yeah, so as Hako just alluded to, this is one of the advantages of being an independent contractor is that you get to deduct a lot of your expenses and it just reduces your income right off the bat, so you never pay tax on it to begin with. So that's a great thing. So one of the huge things you're able to deduct is mileage. We're going to look more in depth at what that looks like in a minute, but I can tell you that nobody does a better job of helping you with that process than Everlance. So you're going to be so grateful to use Everlance as a part of this partnership. Some other things that you can also deduct, though, you'll see on your screen there, sometimes food while you're working. But I put a little question mark on the end of that because this is not one of those like, woohoo, I'm an independent contractor. I get to deduct all of my food. Every time I go to the grocery store, every time I go out to eat, I get to deduct it. Sorry, not quite that good. But if you're working, and particularly if you are working out of your area, so if you're working out of your area, and certainly if you're working overnight out of your area, then you can definitely deduct your food as you're working. That gets a little bit complex as to when you can and when you cannot, but it has to be something that is beyond the ordinary and necessary expense that you would have had just for your personal living. So going to the grocery store, for example, buying all your groceries for your household, that's not going to suddenly be deductible just because you're an independent contractor. Kind of makes sense, right? But if you are incurring extra expense because you are working that you would not have incurred if you were not working, then we can begin to talk about it. So you're overnight, for example, it wouldn't have made sense to drive back home, right? So in that scenario, you definitely can. You're working 50 miles away from home, that's going to be a situation, you know, next town over where there's a whole lot more going on. And so you log in over there. That's going to be a situation where you can deduct all of that food as well as that mileage, by the way, to get there. So great question there. Cell phones. Can you deduct
And
cell phones?
just to highlight one thing,
Yeah, go ahead.
like, so one rule of thumb that Knox just mentioned on can you deduct the food while you're working? So I heard the 50 miles. If you're more than 50 miles from home, so, you know, we work in the Bay Area over here in San Francisco. A lot of people come over from Sacramento because there's more business here. So that's more than 50 miles, that would count. So that's one of the calculations that you can do. So yeah,
Yep,
go ahead, Knox.
absolutely. And cell phones. So the awesome thing about this is you cannot do this business without a smartphone, right? You just can't. So because it is an ordinary and necessary expense for your business, then we can justify deducting some of your cell phone expense. Now, again, this does not mean that we can deduct your cell phone bill that includes the whole family, right? We can only deduct the portion that's going to be used for your business, but we can deduct cell phone expense, and this can really add up. Home office expense. This is one I get a lot of questions about. So home office expense is a sort of and sometimes. Here's the thing. It has to be a space that is exclusively used for your business. So it cannot be space in your bedroom where you're laying on your bed and you sometimes do work there, but you also sleep there, right? So that would not be a deductible area at all. But for example, if you have a separate room where you have a desk and you have your computer and all of that, that can be used for home office expense. In some cases, we can also utilize a portion of a room if you're using that exclusively for working on your business. The key here is exclusive use working for your business. And if
So
you
Knox, if you have a desk, if I have a desk in, you know, in a room, and that's where I do my paperwork. That's where I analyze how much I'm making with DoorDash, how much I'm making with DoorDash versus other apps. Does that count as a home office?
Yes, it does, as long as you're using it only for that purpose. And so that's going to be the key. So make sure that you are not, for example, letting your kid do their homework there in that particular desk. It's going to need to be something that is exclusively used for you in that space. And if it is, then you can deduct that. And basically what we do is we take the square footage and then we multiply that by a calculation. It's a simplified method of doing it, and it works really, really well for us to do this home office expense.
And the cool thing to point out to people, you don't need to figure out, you know, exactly how to do this. If you use tax software like TurboTax or like Credit Karma, which we have a partnership with, they'll walk you through how to do that. If you have an accountant, if you do it with a tax pro like Happy Tax, where Knox work, they'll guide you through this. So the good thing is just for you to know, oh, you know, I wanna make sure that I tell, you know, my tax software or my accountant, hey, have you done the home office expense deduction? So yeah, just to keep it simple.
Absolutely. And then tolls and parking. This is one of those that people forget about. So, you know, there are some areas of the country where we drive through tolls all the time. There are other areas of the country you're like, what's a toll road, right? But if you're in an area of the country where you're driving through tolls all the time, every bit of those tolls is deductible, and it's on top of our mileage deduction. And so that is a huge, huge benefit. Also, if you're paying for parking in the course of doing your work, that is also on top of your standard deduction for mileage. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, standard deduction for mileage, don't worry, we're going to talk about that in a minute, and you will know more about it. But these are some of the key deductions that we can definitely deduct as an independent contractor and as a dasher.
Awesome. And just one quick second, Knox, I just want to share something on my screen. So I think you guys can see my screen now. I'll give you back control in a second, Knox. So if you're more of a visual person and, you know, maybe you're driving right now, I know a couple of you are, and you want to review this later, I'll share this. You can check out some of the top deductions for dashers in this really easy, you know, very visual thing. So you can see all your car expenses, and we're going to deep dive into how do you actually deduct your car expenses. Number two, everything to do with your phone. So your actual buying your phone plan, right? Your service, any accessories like a car mount, charger for your car, things like that, that's all deductible. Inspections. So if DoorDash requires you to get an inspection or your state requires you to get an inspection, all that too. And then, you know, there's a lot more, but what we make it nice with Everlance is that as you use Everlance, we're going to point out things that you can be deducting. So yeah, just wanted to point that out and then throw it back over to you. And I also want to, okay. So A question from Crystal. Can you explain more in depth about cell phone deductions? So my understanding of it is that if you're using your cell, like some people, they're really serious in the gig economy. They might have one personal cell phone, one business cell phone, right? In that case, obviously everything, all your expenses for your business cell phone are deductible. If you're sharing it, then usually the rule of thumb is you take 50%. So is that right, Knox? Or should you actually figure out what percentage of the time am I doing work versus personal stuff on my phone? You're muted, Knox. Okay, got you. Stop share. Okay.
All right,
Got
cool.
you there, and then
For
you can
some
share
reason, it
again.
wouldn't let me unmute myself. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But yeah, so the short answer is technically you probably should calculate. So, but you can do an easy percentage. For example, there's 5 people on my family plan, then I'm going to be 20% of that, right? But if there's 2 people on my family plan, I'm going to be 50% of that. So it can be a pretty simple calculation, but it's not always 50%. So I hope that kind of helps there.
Cool. All right. So the next question, what are the first things I need to know about filing taxes as a Dasher? So this is a really good high level question. What are the top things I need to know at the beginning?
Yeah, so, taxes scare people. Let's be honest. A lot of people get scared about their taxes. We don't want to mess it up. And taxes can be a little bit complicated in general or a lot complicated in general, depending on your perspective. And unfortunately, the fact that you're an independent contractor makes it more complicated. There's a new form that you're going to get to fill out. It's called a Schedule C. It's a business tax form, and that now has to be filed with your tax returns. But there are also advantages to being an independent contractor. You're your own boss. You own your business. You decide when you're going to work, which means you get to control how much you're going to work, how much effort you're going to have, how much money you're going to make. Totally different than when you work for somebody else and they tell you when you can come to work, how many hours they're going to give you, all that kind of thing. When you work as an independent contractor, you have significantly more control over your income and over your business, and you get to deduct way more expenses than you would if you were an employee. So there's good and there's bad. Yes, the taxes are a little more complicated, but there's also some real pluses to that along the way. And obviously, if it's overwhelming to you to try to figure it out on your own, then we're here to help you. But there's also some great tax software out there that will try to help you through the process as well.
Awesome. And I want to acknowledge some people in the chat are asking about, more of a in-depth about cars, right? How do I deduct things like gas, oil changes, etc.? We got a lot of those questions too in the RGP form. So we're going to get to that. But don't worry, that's what we specialize in. So we're going to get to that in detail. We're just going to go through a couple more things first. So this next question is, which form do I file my 1099 income in? And I just want to point out, most of you are probably not, using paper forms anymore, right? So you're either using tax software or you're an advisor like Knox. But it's still helpful for you to know they still use that same name, Schedule C. So make sure when when you're doing it online or with an advisor, you say, hey, I need my Schedule C. I need to put my expenses over in my Schedule C, that sort of thing. And Knox will talk about that a little more.
Yeah, so you see kind of an example. Now this one's a year old, but the form hasn't changed much. So this is it's called the form itself, profit or loss from a business. And like we said, you own your own business as an independent contractor. You are in control. And so you just have to fill this in, and you're going to put all of your incomes. You're going to add it all up. The good news is that they give you some nice reports from DoorDash. And if you work for anybody else in the gig economy space, then you'll add that to that. But you're going to add your gross receipts or sales. That means total income before you deduct anything out is going to go there. And then we're also going to place our deductions on this form as well. Again, don't sweat it. Tax software will help you do this. If you're working with a tax professional like one of my guys, we're going to help you with this as well. So nothing that you have to sweat about.
Awesome. Okay, so a little bit more about, we're starting to get into the mileage piece that a lot of you care about, because obviously we know as Dashers, you're road warriors, you're on the road all the time, you're putting thousands of miles in your car. So that can lower your taxes drastically. So yeah, a lot of you probably have this question, where do I put my mileage deduction? I'll let Knox take it away.
Yeah, so like I said, we're going to do all of our deductions on this Schedule C as well. So this is actually part 4. This is our car expenses, and you're going to put information on your vehicle. Now, a lot of people get confused about this. This question, when did you place your vehicle in service for business purposes? So this is going to be the first date that you started with DoorDash, for example, if that is the only company that you're working with, or the first date that you started using your car for business purposes outside of being an employee. This is where this is going to go. So, for example, we're going to pretend that I started working for DoorDash on July 15th of 2019. Then what date did I place my vehicle in service for business purposes? July 15th, 2019 would be what I would put here. Now, if I was working for a competitor or somebody different, or I was doing Uber or Lyft or something like that prior to that, but I still was in the gig economy using my vehicle, then it's whatever date I started using this particular vehicle at that point. So that's kind of what we put there. And obviously, if you are in this space, you're putting a lot of mileage on your car. So you do not want to miss these deductions, and Everlance helps a ton with this part of the process. So you're going to answer all of these questions. And if you have any questions with that, then obviously you're going to touch base with an advisor or something, and we will help you through that. But one of the most important questions that you'll notice at the bottom here is, do you have evidence to support your deduction? Do you have evidence to support your deduction? You do not want to be in a place where your answer to that is no. You always want to be able to say yes, and you also want to be able to say that it is written evidence. And Everlance gives you the evidence that you need in order to support this deduction. And it is written. It is written in electronic format, but you can print that out, and electronic data storage is an acceptable form for the IRS. And so then you get to answer that question written, and this is super, super important. So Everlance will be a huge help to you in that way. So how do we actually deduct these? Well, there's 2 methods, and someone alluded to this before in terms of how do we do our oil changes, how do we do all of that. Did you want to hop in, Hako?
Actually, I did. I want to share my screen again real quick.
Awesome.
I haven't shared this with you, Knox. So this is hot off the press.
Cool.
We actually have some cool graphics to illustrate this a little bit. So I'm going to show them a little bit, and Knox will also talk about them. So yeah, I'm throwing you some curveballs here, Knox, just to keep it fun.
That's all right. Go for it.
All right. So you guys can see my screen? Think so?
We can.
All right, so we have this little, Everlance Tax Academy for DoorDash. So here is where you can, review some of these things. But anyways, writing off car expenses, right? So this is where we talk about how there's 2 options for writing off your car expenses. Basically, one is, here we're simplifying, we're calling it the just mileage option. That's what we call the standard mileage deduction. So just track your mileage, then you multiply it by a rate, and that's how you get everything. It covers everything. The other one is the mileage and receipts option, or the actual expenses option. So again, I'm just doing like the high level, and then I'll let Knox, be a little bit more specific and tax correct here. But high level, with the just mileage option, you're only going to track your miles. You don't need to track any of your car expenses like gas, oil changes, tire rotation, none of that, right? And that's because you're going to get your total mileage. You're going to multiply it by 58 cents per mile. And that's actually a really good rate. That's like more than you actually spend for most people. So that's really good. The other option is what we call the mileage and receipts option, or the actual expenses option. And for that, you actually have to keep track of everything. You have to keep track of your receipts for gas, oil changes, etc. And you have to keep track of the miles. So it's more work, miles and receipts. And then, you do a little bit of math to multiply all your expenses times the percentage of your miles that were for work. And that's how you get that, that deduction. And you can actually do both and compare it, right? So you can say, I'm going to do this option. I'm going to compare it with this option and see which one's better. For most people, number 1 is going to be better, and it's a lot easier. So that's what we recommend. So anyways, Knox, that was me getting my 50 seconds of fame with explaining this, but I'd love you to explain it a little bit more. And should I stay here, or should I go back to the slides?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go back to the slides.
Perfect. Okay.
If you'll quit sharing.
So I'll stop the share. Cool.
Awesome. So yeah, that's a great tool, by the way. I'm glad that y'all created that. So that standard rate that we talked about, all you have to do is keep track of the business miles, and then you just multiply by the percentage. And we put those percentages here on the screen for you. So for 2019, which is the taxes most of us are doing, it's 58 cents. If you happen to have to back up and do 2018 taxes still, that's 54.5. And by the way, for 2020, it's lowering half a penny, so it's 57.5 cents. Now, the great thing is Everlance keeps track of all of that. They know those rates, and they sort of build all of that in, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to keep receipts with the standard mileage rate. You just have to know what the miles were. So you're going to know your percentage that's personal, you're going to know your percentage that's business related and what the purpose of that was, and you're going to track all of that in Everlance, and then you can use the standard rate. The actual expenses is where you do keep all of the receipts. So you're going to keep records of your insurance cost, your repair cost, your gas, your car payments, and your mileage. You have to also track your mileage. People sometimes don't understand that. You have to track your mileage in either scenario. So in this case, we're going to do division. So for example, we're going to do simple math. I drove 10,000 miles during the course of the year. 8,000 of it was business, 2,000 of it was personal. Then that's pretty simple, 80-20, right? We actually have an example of that, and we'll sort of show you what that looks like here. Or we used to have an example, maybe we don't anymore, but that's okay. Oh, here it is. So if you drove 3,680 miles for work in 2018, we multiply that times 58 cents because that's the 2018 or the 2019 rate rather. That's $21.34 and 40 cents, just over $2,100, right? So you can deduct that. If you had actual car expenses of $1,750 with the same exact mileage, but it represented about 44% of your business, you could deduct, in this case, $770. So which would I rather deduct, $2,100 or $770? I'm pretty sure we're all going to pick the same answer, right? Not to mention the fact that I don't have to worry about providing all of those receipts to the IRS when I do the standard deduction. The great news, though, is that Everlance will help you with both. You can actually take pictures and track your expenses right in Everlance, and like Hako said, you can do that comparison along the way. So you definitely want to track your mileage. That part's super simple in Everlance, but you can also track these other expenses as well in Everlance and then do a comparison between the two. Did you want to say anything else about that, Hako?
No, that's super clear.
All right, cool. So it looks like we also had some questions about the 1099 form. And I noticed we had a question in the chat too about at what point do I have to file? So I'm going to go ahead and throw that question in with this one, even though it's slightly different. So the rules are that if you made $600 or more as an independent contractor, you might get a 1099. However, there are a lot of companies where the threshold is actually higher than that because they're issuing 1099Ks as opposed to 1099 miscellaneous. So here's the real answer to the question, do I have to file if I'm below a certain threshold? As an independent contractor, $400 is the threshold. So if you made $400 or more, then you have to file as an independent contractor, even if you have no other income whatsoever. So $400 is the threshold for an independent contractor on a Schedule C. And so that's going to be virtually everybody here is going to have a filing requirement because you probably made at least $400 in your business. And that's gross receipts. So be aware, $400 in gross receipts on line 1 of the Schedule C, and you now have a filing requirement. Even if you don't get a 1099, you still have to include that income. So hopefully you're tracking that income. You can, if you're just in DoorDash, you can also log into DoorDash and they'll let you know exactly what you made there. What if you have 1099s for multiple jobs? Does that go on separate Schedule Cs? The answer to that is no. As long as it's all in the gig economy, it's going to go on one Schedule C. But even if it were in separate kinds of businesses, it's still going to be multiple Schedule Cs on the same tax return. So it's going to be on the same tax return. You file those together. What if I got a W-2 and a 1099? Is that 2 separate returns? No, it's the same return. The 1040 tax form, that's just the individual income tax return. It just means you're going to report that W-2 and then you're going to report the 1099s on your Schedule C. So you would just also have the additional Schedule C on your tax return, but it still files on the same tax return. Question about when am I going to get my 1099? Well, if you set up your account at payable.com, then you should receive that by 1/26. If not, they are mailing out. They are required by law to mail out by January 31st. So even if you're getting 1099s from other companies or W-2s from other companies, those all have to mail by January 31st, unless you signed up to get them electronically. Then they're going to show up in your account, for example, at payable.com, and you can download those on the 26th in that scenario.
And actually, to jump in there, I think I actually didn't update this number. It was changing a little bit this date. So the place to get the official date is you should have an email in your inbox from DoorDash, and that'll have the official instructions for setting up your account with Payable. So I think you still have a couple of days to do that, and the exact date when that'll be sent out. So take a look at your inbox and look for DoorDash, and that's that. And I also want to point out a few people in the RSVP questions. They asked, when do I get my W-2? So most of you probably know the answer to this already from this webinar, but just to point out, you're not going to get a W-2, right? You're not an employee. Instead of a W-2, you're going to get a 1099. So it's similar, just a different form. So just to point that out. Cool. And what's the next question, Knox? Because I may have one from the chat to do first. Let's see.
How much do you need to pay in taxes?
Okay. So actually, before that one, let's see. Actually, let's wait. Okay, cool. So the next question, how much will I need to pay in taxes, or will I get a refund? How do I sort of figure this out?
Yeah, so this is one of those, it depends, right? Don't you love those it depends answers? It depends on whether you also had like a W-2 job and DoorDash, or whether you only had DoorDash and other business type things, Uber, Lyft, that kind of thing, that are adding to that, and so only 1099 jobs, or you have some combination of the above. So one thing is for sure, if you only did DoorDash, or if you only had 1099 jobs, you are going to owe. Why is that? It's because of what we talked about earlier. No taxes were taken out along the way. And so you now have to pay those taxes in now because you didn't take those taxes out along the way. The only exception to that is if you made estimated tax payments quarterly, which if you did not work with a tax professional, you probably did not. So we would help you to set up that going forward so that you didn't have a big hit there. But yeah, if you are a 1099 only person, you in all likelihood are going to pay taxes. Now there is a slight exception to that possibly, and that is if you are in what I call the sweet spot, where you qualify for refundable credits like the earned income tax credit, then you might be in a situation where the earned income tax credit might possibly offset some of your taxes. But for most people, you're going to pay taxes if you only have a 1099. Now, if you have DoorDash and an employee job, it could go either way. Some of that depends on how much of your income comes from which, right? So that could really go other way. And if you're mostly W-2, then you're probably going to get a refund in most cases. So that's kind of what that looks like. Obviously, I can't give you a blanket answer that's going to cover everybody's exact scenario, because we have to look at, okay, how much total income did you make? Do you have a spouse? What kind of income did they make? All of that sort of thing. But the bottom line is, if you had W-2 jobs where your taxes are withheld, then most people get back. If you only have 1099 jobs, most people owe. And if you have some combination thereof, then it's really going to go either way, depending on the percentage of income that comes from which. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's really clear, Knox. And just to add one thing, we know people that we know from talking to a lot of dashers, that we work with, even if you're only dashing, if you have a bunch of kids, if you're not making a lot of money, maybe you're making 30 to 40K in a year, or less, you're probably going to get a refund. As Knox was saying, you might get that earned income tax credit, that sort of thing. So basically, you'll have to see, like you'll have a better idea after you do it, and then future years should be pretty similar. So yeah, thanks for that, Knox.
Cool.
Yeah, so this is one that I'm passionate about, since it's very much what we do, and it's why record your miles. And I also want to point out before you answer that one of the questions from the chat. So let's see, who was it? It was Casey Rex Mathis. He said he drove 56.3 miles for DoorDash the other day, and Everlance said that trip was worth $32. So, high level, you're driving, and Everlance is telling you, like you're saving money. Like, so how does that work? Really, you're not actually going to get, Everlance is not going to send you $32, right? It's not like that, but it's going to lower your taxes significantly. So that's sort of like the high level answer, but I'll let Knox go into some more.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So basically that's going to become a deduction on your Schedule C. So let's pretend, for example, that you made $30 on that particular drive. and you have, forgot what it was, did you say 32 bucks or something like that? That
Right.
was the deduction. Then in that scenario, you actually have a higher deduction than you even earned, which means that that higher deduction is now going to offset some other cases where you did have some real earnings. So that can sort of go either way. Likewise, if I made 100 bucks on that delivery, talk about a nice delivery, right? But let's say I made 100 bucks on that delivery and I spent 32 bucks, then I'm going to have $68 there. That is taxable income, but that $32 reduced that. So that's kind of how that works, and it really helps along the way. And what a lot of our clients find is that the mileage and the other deductions that they get really minimizes their taxes in a big, big way, so they don't owe near as much. So like I saw someone saying, we are really messed up in the chat. I cleaned that up slightly just since this is recorded, but I saw someone saying that in the chat. Don't necessarily assume that before we run all of the calculations. And if you're really worried about that, you may want to talk to a tax professional, and we can probably spend 5 minutes on the phone with you and tell you, roughly what your scenario would probably end up like. And generally, we don't even charge for that. So definitely would love to help you with that.
Right. So again, just to put a splash on that from Knox, why record your miles is because they can lower your taxes drastically, right? So you're spending a lot on your car in order to work. Those are all business expenses. The IRS recognizes that, and they allow you to lower your taxes drastically if you keep good documentation. So yeah. And I also want to address the question that Judith just asked. What happens if I never recorded my miles because I didn't know? So we know this is a very common thing, right? A lot of people don't really think about taxes until tax time, right? You don't all have jobs like I do where I'm thinking about taxes all year. So totally get that. Normally, what we recommend for that is that DoorDash actually tracks some of your mileage, and they make that available to you. So if you go over to your DoorDash, I think it might only be available on the web and not through the app, or it might be on the app. I have to check. But basically, you go over to your dashboard, you look at your stats for the year. You'll be able to get your total miles that DoorDash recorded. But the thing to note is that that's not going to have all the miles. And just to do a little explanation on that, I just want to share my screen one more time and just show you what the difference is with those miles. So we're going back to our little Tax Academy Center here. And yeah, so basically we're talking about which miles you can write off. So these are the ones that DoorDash records. So whenever Dash Remote is on, so if you're picking up an order, if you're dropping off an order, you're driving around to a hot zone, waiting for a new order, all of those DoorDash will track. That's really good. But there's a couple other categories that they won't track. So if you're going to, from your home to your first order, or from your last order to your home, if you're off the app at that point, DoorDash is not going to track that. And that can be pretty significant. Again, before I mentioned, some people, commute from a couple hours away in order to do this work. So that can be a lot of mileage. So that's a good one to know. And then the other one is if you're taking care of your car, you're driving to a gas station, you're to do maintenance, car washes, that's all part of your job. So all of those are valid miles as well. So, okay, zooming back. If you didn't track your miles, you'll be able to get all of these from DoorDash. It's really hard to figure this one out and this one out if you didn't track your miles. There are some ways, you can spend a lot of time on Google Maps figuring out where you drove, do it in detail for 1 week and then multiply it out by like the number of weeks that you drove, that sort of thing. It's a little bit complicated. So normally what we say is just focus on the miles that DoorDash gives you, and then for next year, start tracking everything, and you'll have an even bigger deduction. Knox, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, that was good. The other thing that I do want to point out is that technically speaking, you're supposed to have what the IRS deems a contemporaneous mileage log. Mm-hmm. So the DoorDasher app is going to help you to sort of qualify for that. If you're doing the Google Maps sort of thing, sometimes you can get away with that, but technically speaking, the IRS can disallow that because it's not mm-hmm. contemporaneous, meaning it did not happen at the time that the mileage actually occurred. So mm-hmm. my advice to clients, if you didn't know what you were doing in the past, we do the best we can, right? And we make sure we fix it going forward. The IRS tends to be a lot more lenient if we can show and prove that we have fixed it going forward and that this is not our pattern of being irresponsible, that this is just we did not know. It is hard to make as much of an argument for that if we went through all of those gymnastics, did this, and then still didn't fix the problem the next year, then the IRS says, not so much. And almost guaranteed, if they do choose to examine you, if you do that sort of thing, they're also going to open up subsequent years and previous years and look and see if you had the same pattern. And so just be aware of that. It's a pretty big red flag for an exam. So I don't always recommend that we do that unless it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to point out. Cool. So I'll give you back control, Knox.
Awesome. So it looks like we have a couple of questions here related to mileage before we kind of move on beyond this, and maybe we should catch some of those. Do you want to do that, Hako?
Let's do that. Do you have a couple in mind?
Yeah, so one of the questions came from Sylvia. She says, what about the Waze app? Doesn't that record your miles? And the short answer there, Sylvia, is if you have the Waze app open, then it will record all of the miles that you're driving, but it doesn't keep track of what those miles are for. So you don't know what's personal, you don't know what's business. What it will help you to do is figure out, okay, I drove this many miles during the year, assuming I always had the Waze app open, and assuming I was never in another car, right? Because you're also only supposed to be tracking particular cars. Everlance, by the way, will help you with that. If you move between cars, it also supports multiple cars. So just be aware of that kind of thing. I'll give you an example. I was on an airplane earlier. I travel a fair amount, and I was on an airplane earlier this month, and I actually forgot to put my phone in a mode where it wouldn't record. And my mileage app popped up and told me I had this huge amount of mileage deduction for my airplane ride. Wonderful, right? So that would be bad if I actually claimed that, because those would not be deductible mileage. So I have to be able to know how to account for that. Another person said, well, okay, I get my miles tracked through Everlance, but it doesn't track the exact speedometer number. Does that really matter? And the short answer is no. We are supposed to know what our beginning of the year mileage is and what our end of the year mileage is. And I'll give you a hint, they're the same number. The end of the year is the same number as the start of the next year, right? But if you didn't track, so my best advice is to take a picture of that in your phone. Just take a picture of your speedometer on January 1st or December 31st. I don't care which. Okay, Knox, but I didn't do that. Just go back, look at your oil changes or something and get a close calculation, but show, kind of how you came up with what that was. It's going to be good enough. But the bottom line is you have to be able to track what was your personal and what was your business in that percentage. And so long as you can do that, and Everlance helps you to do that, you're going to be just fine. Someone else said, hey, I could do the old-fashioned spreadsheet and record where I went, a paper mileage log. Yes, you can absolutely do that. I personally have found that for me and for my wife, I do better with an app like Everlance to help me out because, I may not write everything down. Actually, I'm better at that than my wife, to be perfectly honest. I'm kind of one of those anal tax guys. My wife, on the other hand, forgets a lot to record things in a paper mileage log, right? Because we had to do that. Years ago, there weren't these apps. We changed her to an app, and it is amazing how many more miles I can now claim on our return related to her work. And so fantastic. So absolutely glad to help so many people. I see some people saying they love Everlance, and glad to see that, Sylvia. Glad to see that you started using it and that it is working well for you. That is fantastic. I think I caught most of these answers related to the mileage. Did you see any other, Hako, that I missed?
Let's see. What if I use multiple vehicles for dashing? Is one.
Yeah, so we kind of talked about that, right?
Right.
Yeah, so with Everlance, you have to, I think, and Hako could answer this better than I could, I think you have to log in on the website and set up your multiple cars, and then it will work.
You can do it from the app.
You can do it from the app too, okay, yeah. So you can set up your multiple apps in Everlance, your multiple cars in Everlance, and it will help you to track that. So that it absolutely works well for that. And in that scenario, I would highly recommend you use Everlance because the DoorDasher app is just not going to know that.
Okay, cool. So I'll give you back control for the deck.
Awesome.
And yeah, and I think we just have a couple more, and then we have some like closing resources. And also stick around. We're going to give you a survey link, and if you fill out the survey link, you're going to have a chance to win a $30 Amazon gift card. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that'll be nice around this time of the year. So
Hako, I'll let you talk a little bit about how Everlance works here.
Oh, cool. Nice. So get an opportunity to tell you. Yeah. So if you come away from this, someone's drawing on the screen. That's cool. So if you come away from this and you say, hey, I want to start tracking my mileage, I haven't done it yet, is it going to be a lot of work? The cool thing that it's not going to be a lot of work. It's all automatic with Everlance. You download the app one time. Actually, I have it open right here. You download the app one time, and then even if you have the app closed while you're driving, it's recording all your mileage. So if you do, a good tip is to keep the app like open on your phone. It doesn't have to be at the top, just somewhere. That'll improve the accuracy. But basically, it'll track all your trips, and then all you do is you simply swipe to the right to say that was a work trip, or you swipe to the left to say that was a personal trip. And that's all of your categorization that is required by the IRS. So you can rest easy, you're covered, you're not missing any miles. It's really as simple as that. So, and like someone asked before, there are other apps that do this. We're not the only one. We do think we're the best, but we're not talking about that here too much.
So I don't work for Everlance, but I can tell you a competitive advantage that they have over some of the competitors out there. And that is that they don't only do mileage. They'll also help you to track some other things as well. So you can take pictures of receipts and other expenses, store those right in your account as well, especially if you're interested in deducting any other kinds of expenses, parking, tolls, those kinds of receipts, that kind of thing that can all take pictures of. You can add all that in, and Everlance does a great job. Personally, I do recommend it. So you want to talk some about some discounts?
Totally. Yeah. So, say you come away from this and you say, okay, I'm ready to file my taxes. Someone's still drawing on the screen. That's cool. Maybe you can draw a smiley face. Cool. So we have some cool discounts, just for Dashers, which is pretty cool. So if you want to file online, what I recommend is to use Credit Karma Tax, because it's actually completely 100% free. So you've probably, I used TurboTax in the past. Often they say, hey, it's free. And as you go through, it ends up not being free. So this one is 100% free. And the place that you can get that offer is you go to this address here, bit.ly/ever. I'll just write it here because it's a little bit complicated. You can just click on it if you want. And then this will all be in a follow-up email as well. So anyways, this is a great place to file online for free. And then, Knox can tell you about filing with a tax professional.
Yeah, so we actually set up, I finished setting it up this morning. It's not a complex site, but we have a site, gigeconomytaxes.com, and you can go, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what you can do there in just a minute, but basically it's going to enable you to get onto a list and get all kinds of updates from me about taxes, and it's also going to enable you for a discount. But this is, the Credit Karma that he was just talking about. Fantastic thing. If you want to do it by yourself, it's free. It's really hard to beat free. You can't beat free, right? So if you think you could do it by yourself, then that works well. I personally have not used Credit Karma. Probably not a surprise to you, right? Obviously, I do my own taxes with professional software, but I have not heard bad things about it. And I actually know some of these executives. They're friends of mine. So I suspect that they do a great job in their app, and I would totally feel comfortable in that. In terms of their security and data protection and all of those kinds of things. So,
and I can also say, as Knox is saying good things about filing online, I also want to say it's great, especially if it's your first year as a Dasher. You probably have a lot of questions. Sometimes it might cost you a couple $100s to file with a really good professional, but they might find you additional deductions that are actually worth more than a couple $100. So overall, you end up saving money. So it depends a little bit. There's no easy answer, but I just want to point it out that that's a really good option as well.
Yeah, so if you go to gigeconomytaxes.com, then you can actually sign up for updates from me by email. I will send these out personally starting next week. And you get information specific to the U.S. taxation of the gig or the sharing economy, two different synonymous terms, basically. You're not required to use us to subscribe for these updates. So this does not, say, hey, I'm using Knox for my taxes or anything like that. But we are offering a special. So our normal price for persons who are independent contractors is actually $500. We do a top-notch job. We have all credentialed people. We are offering a special where you can get it for $200 if you either already use Everlance or agree to start using Everlance. Why are we willing to do that? Because it makes our job easier as tax professionals, because it means that you're keeping track of things along the way, and we don't have to spend as much time helping you get some of that figured out. Now, if you don't use Everlance, we're still going to give you a discount, but it'll be $250. So if you agree to sign up for Everlance, if you haven't already, start using Everlance, then that's worth $50, additional $50 off to me for my team, because I know it's not going to take as much time. And so $200 if you are already using Everlance or agree to start using Everlance, $250 if you don't use Everlance. Either way, it's a fantastic discount. All of our professionals are credentialed. That means we're licensed and we're insured, and we have experts. That's the bottom line. We do a good job. So it's not just sort of your run-of-the-mill shop with someone who does this just part-time part of the year. We actually do this year-round, and we know what we're doing. So if you're interested in getting those updates, again, it's gigeconomytaxes.com. You just go, you sign up, no cost to sign up for the email list, and those updates will come directly from me related to taxes, and then we'll also send you information as a part of that list on how you can get this discount since you registered through the webinar today.
Awesome. So yeah, now here we're showing, one of our cool stats is that on average, Dashers who use Everlance, they'll save over $2,000 on their taxes. So it's actually quite massive. So yeah, if you wanna, so a couple of people asked, is Everlance free? So Everlance has a free version and a paid version. You can use the free version forever. It's just like Spotify, it has ads. So our thing doesn't have ads. Instead, it will limit you to only 30 automatically tracked trips per month. So yeah, if you're dashing a lot, you may want to upgrade. It's tax deductible, and it'll probably save you a lot more money than what it's cost. And just for DoorDash, we're doing 3 months of premium, totally free, just a trial. So you can get that offer at everlance.com/DoorDash. And then if you, and that same page, I just want to highlight something. So, a couple times I showed those little, learning things where you can see which miles can I deduct, how do I write off car expenses. If you want to review any of these things at your own leisure, just go to everlance.com/DoorDash, and at the bottom, you'll find this little thing. And back to you, Alex.
All right, cool. So I think we've answered most of the questions. Are there any other questions that came in that we really need to take a look at?
From the chat, from the chat, I haven't seen any. So maybe we can make this the last call. If you have any final questions, throw them in here. If you have questions that you think of afterwards, what you can do is in the same link here, bit.ly/taxq, right? I just sent that up here, over here. With that, you can fill out our survey. If you fill it out, we'll enter you to win $30 in Amazon. So that's pretty cool. And then the other thing is that you can ask any questions there, and we'll answer those by email later on. So that's that. And if you have any questions in the future, I'll share my personal email. You're very welcome to just email me, and I'm happy to do those. So that's just hako@everlance.com. So yeah, we're almost wrapping up. Thanks. Yes, most of you, like 90% of you, have stayed the entire time. So that's really cool. Thank you all for being here. And let's just answer a couple of these final questions before we sign off. And we'll for sure sign off before the top of the hour. So from Mary, do we need to have a business license in order to include home use as an expense? And I said to Mary actually in the chat, no, that was my understanding. But Knox, you can fill her in a little bit more.
Yeah, Hako is correct. You do not. So this is going to vary. You do not in most cases. Let me say that. This is going to vary some from municipality to municipality because business licenses are issued at the local level. This is not a federal thing. So I'm going to say what is usually the case, but then I'm going to give you the caveat that this does vary from town to town, and I cannot be familiar with every town across the entire country. But for the most part, this sort of business, since it is, people are not coming to your home, in terms of retail persons are not coming to your home, you're not selling things out of your home, you're simply having an office in the home where you work, and then you do all of your work away from the home. Generally speaking, you're not going to be required to have a business license in order to claim that home office deduction. Now, there are some municipalities that will require you to have a business license to do the work, but that is unrelated to the home office deduction, which is an IRS requirement. So you can always claim that home office deduction, assuming you meet the requirements for that, one of which is not a business license, but you might be, in some cases, required to have a business license in some municipalities. In where I live, I would not doing DoorDash, but in some towns you may. And so that's something you're going to need to check with the local county or the city, depending where you live, and just ask them. Say, hey, I'm doing DoorDash. Do I need a business license? In most cases, the answer is going to be no. But there are a couple of municipalities around the country that are money hungry, frankly.
Okay, awesome, Knox. I'm seeing another question here from Casey, and Casey is asking, when I'm tracking my mileage, can I keep track just for DoorDash, or do I need to keep track personal and DoorDash? So I'll take the first crack at that answer. And basically, the answer, if you're doing the standard mileage deduction, which is what we recommend for most people, all you need to know is what is your work mileage. So, right, you only need to track DoorDash. But the easiest way to use Everlance or any other app is to do automatic tracking, right? When you use automatic tracking, the phone is tracking you no matter where you go. So it's going to catch both your personal and your DoorDash. So you need to go tell the phone afterwards, hey, that was DoorDash. Or you can actually set rules. So if you are a power user in Everlance, a really cool tip is you can go over to work hours, and you can say, hey, I normally work DoorDash from, like around lunchtime every single weekday. So every time that you're driving around lunchtime, we automatically are going to classify those things as DoorDash. So yeah. The other way you can do it is if you want to do it manually. Each time you go drive for DoorDash, you can say start tracking, and that'll work for the entire like 3 hours that you're driving DoorDash. That'll track all your DoorDash stuff, and then when you're driving personal, you're not tracking. So that's a way. That's a way to do it. Maybe you don't want to track your personal stuff for some reason. That's totally fine. Anything you'd add there? Oh wow, someone's drawing a lot.
Michael said, although I will tell you, I highly recommend that you allow it to track everything. It is super simple just to swipe it to the personal side. And I highly recommend you do that, because the reality is you're going to forget to turn it on and off if you do it the other way. So
that's right.
Just let it do that, and you will be better off.
Yeah. Let's see. Thanks for all the questions you guys are asking at the end. This is really helpful. So we talked a bit about food, specific rule on deducting food. So if you want to see the full discussion, we'll send out the recording in a follow-up email, and you can rewatch this. But the takeaway that I took was, if you're more than 50 miles from your home, that's usually the rule of thumb that you can deduct your food. Okay. And then what is the percentage we should save overall for our taxes? So that's a really good question. And yeah, Knox, I would love to know how you would answer that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to give you a generic answer, and then I'm going to tell you that if you work with us, we'll give you a more specific answer after we've looked at your particular scenario, and we'll be able to get much more accurate. But in general, I'm going to say 25%. So I would put 25% away in general, and you should be relatively safe. I say in general because, if you have a spouse, for example, that makes $400,000 a year, then you're in a different tax bracket than most of us on this call. And so I can't look at your total scenario without knowing your total scenario, right? But in general, I would say 25%. Some of you, it's going to be significantly less. Some of you, that's going to be about right. I'm on the high side for most people on this call, I think, and that's intentional so that you make sure you put aside enough. But again, if you work with us, we'll be able to help you know specifically what you need in your scenario for the coming year.
Awesome. And actually, that's a really good segue. I wasn't planning on telling you guys about our newest product, but I would love to, because it's very relevant for that. So let me just share my screen again. So yeah, I'm sharing this from some screenshots, because it's a really new product. We only have a few hundred people using it. It's in what we call beta right now. So I'll share the link if you guys want to check it out. But basically, we're calling this Tax Vault. And what it does is it automatically sets aside money for your tax bill. So, Knox was just talking about saving, some percentage, 10%, 20%, 30%. Instead of having to, every time you get paid from DoorDash, going into your bank app, transferring that, remembering, sometimes you forget, all that, this thing will do it automatically for you. So you set a rule, you determine what the percentage is. Let's say you're doing 25%. So every time you get paid $100, we'll put $25 into your tax vault. It's really simple, and then you can take it out. So yes, getting set up is really easy. You just give us these 3 pieces of information, and then you connect your bank account, and then you're ready to rock and roll. So we calculate what your independent income is, and then we say, hey, like, either you're all good, or hey, like, we're actually gonna you might owe $10 more. Make sure to save that. So that's a cool way to use our app to not have to think about saving for taxes. And I'll share that link too in the follow-up email if anyone is interested.
I totally love that. So excellent job.
Yeah, we
Roland.
hadn't shown you yet. This is
Yeah,
our
I know,
newest
I love
product.
it. I love it. It's great.
Cool. I guess a little quick fire now. Can I use the app for Uber Eats, Grubhub, etc.? Yes, you can use it for any independent income that you have, real estate, like dog walking, plumbing, anything you do. And now we actually work with companies as well, so that's kind of cool too if you're an employee. Anything else here that you're seeing, Knox?
Yeah, this one is sort of outside of the tax realm, but I'll take it anyway. Mary says, I went to a car dealership to get a car and they wouldn't approve me because DoorDash wasn't quote unquote a real job. Any advice? Yeah, so the short answer is if you have been doing DoorDash for a while and you actually have a tax return that shows that income on your tax return, and then they're going to approve you. If you just started DoorDash, they're probably not. So there are two ways that a car dealer will do it, either with the income showing on a tax return or with bank statements. So you would have to provide several months of bank statements to show, hey, I actually got this much income, and do it that way. If the actual salesperson doesn't know how to do that, you want to ask for the F&I department. That stands for finance and insurance, and it is the F&I guys that actually get people approved. And so that's my best advice on that. And I say that as someone who used to manage an F&I department about 20 years ago. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also just looking a little bit through the RSVP questions here, and I see a lot of questions that are basically like, I need my 1099. So we covered that, right? You're going to get that sent to you by DoorDash. Check your inbox. Either you'll get it electronically if you sign up for payable or by mail. So like, you'll be good. And then a lot of people are like, how do I do my taxes? Like, well, like, we talked about some options there, like go see an advisor or do it online. So like, hopefully for like those high level questions, if you rewatch this video, that there's a lot of detail there, but I'm just seeing a lot of those questions. So I just wanted to highlight that. And yeah, I think we'll leave it at this. We said it would be an hour. So thank you everyone so much for coming. Again, I'm going to reshare that link. If you just take 30 seconds, literally it's all it's going to take. That's going to help us make this better. And it's also going to enter you. You can see there's only 20 people in this group. So you have a 1 in 20 chance in winning $30 for just doing 30 seconds of work. So let me send that right here. And yeah, Knox, thank you so much for being here with us as a tax expert. As always, I'm blown away by your knowledge and your ability to explain things. So thank you. And again, we'll send a follow-up email with resources and my email so you can send me more questions, that sort of thing. And thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Cheers.